The silent conquerors. The Vorthak had ruled the galaxy for over 10,000 years, and in all that time they had never needed to fire a single weapon in anger. Their ships, sleek obsidian vessels that seemed to absorb light itself, drifted through space like harbingers of inevitable doom. When these dark monuments appeared in a system's skies, civilizations didn't fight back. They surrendered. They always surrendered. Supreme Overlord Kethavar stood in the command center of the flagship Nightmare's Edge, his 6 arms folded behind his towering frame. His species had evolved specifically for intimidation, standing nearly 12 feet tall with elongated limbs that ended in razor-sharp claws, eyes that glowed like burning coals, and a voice that could make hardened warriors weep. The Vorthak were nature's perfect psychological weapons. They didn't need to destroy worlds. They broke minds instead. "Status report," Kethavar commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber like distant thunder. Commander Zexthul, his second-in-command, approached with the fluid grace that marked all Vorthak nobility. "The Andorian system has submitted, Supreme Overlord. 3 billion souls now serve the Empire. They offered no resistance after the fear protocols were deployed." Kethavar nodded with satisfaction. The fear protocols were their masterpiece, a combination of telepathic manipulation, holographic terrors, and psychological warfare that had never failed to break a species' will to fight. The process was elegant in its simplicity. First, they would broadcast nightmarish visions directly into the minds of the target population. Then, they would demonstrate their power by manipulating local weather patterns, causing natural disasters that seemed to respond to their presence. Finally, they would offer a choice: submit and live. In service or face obliteration. Every species chose submission. Every single one. "Excellent," Kethavar said. "What of our expansion into the Outer Rim territories?" 3 new systems have been identified for integration, Supreme Overlord. The first contains a species called the Zelani. Early scans suggest they will prove as malleable as the others. The second houses the Korvax, a hive mind species that should collapse quickly once their central consciousness is compromised. The third— Zexthul paused, checking his data tablet. The third is inhabited by a species that calls itself humanity. Kethavar's interest was piqued. In 10 millennia of conquest, he had encountered every type of sapient life the galaxy had to offer. Hive minds, collective consciousnesses, warrior races, peaceful traders, ancient mystics, technological singularities. All had fallen before the Vorthak's psychological supremacy. "Tell me about these humans." "They appear to be a young species, Supreme Overlord, barely 2 centuries into space travel. Their technology is primitive, their military forces scattered across multiple factions. They show signs of internal conflict and resource competition. Standard psychological profiles suggest they will break within hours of first contact." Kethavar smiled, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Dispatch Scout Fleet Gamma. Initiate standard fear protocols. I want their surrender documented for the archives." 3 days later, Scout Fleet Gamma entered the Sol system. The human homeworld, a blue-green sphere called Earth, hung peacefully in the void. Completely unaware that its fate had already been decided, the scouts began their work immediately, broadcasting terror directly into human minds across the planet. But something went wrong. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Martinez was working late in her laboratory at the Global Defense Initiative when the visions began. She expected to see her greatest fears made manifest as the alien broadcasts intended. Instead, she felt a surge of curiosity. The images were certainly disturbing, but her scientific mind immediately began analyzing them, breaking down their construction, understanding their purpose. "Fascinating," she murmured, making notes even as otherworldly horrors danced in her peripheral vision. Targeted neurological manipulation. Crude, but effective on species without proper preparation. Across the planet, similar scenes played out. Where the Vorthak expected screaming and submission, they found humans studying their fear protocols, adapting to them, even laughing at some of the more absurd manifestations. Military leaders convened emergency sessions not to discuss surrender but to analyze this new threat. Scientists worked around the clock to understand the alien technology. Children drew pictures of the scary monsters and promptly forgot about them. The weather manipulation came next. The Vorthak triggered earthquakes, storms, and floods across Earth, demonstrating their power. But instead of cowering, humans mobilized. Disaster relief efforts sprang into action with practiced efficiency. Communities that had been at each other's throats the day before now worked together to save lives and rebuild. The natural disasters that were meant to break human spirit instead forged it stronger. Finally, the ultimatum came. A massive hologram of Kethvar himself appeared in the skies above every major human city, his burning eyes glaring down at the population below. People of Earth, his voice boomed across the planet. I am Kethvar, supreme overlord of the Vorthak Empire. For 10,000 years we have brought order to chaos, peace to conflict, unity to division. You have witnessed our power. You have felt our reach. Submit now and serve willingly. Resist and face extinction. The response was immediate and unanimous. From government leaders to street protesters, from military commanders to school children, humanity's answer echoed across every communication channel on the planet. No, but it wasn't just a simple refusal. Human governments began broadcasting their own messages back to the alien fleet. They shared their history, their struggles, their triumphs. They told stories of human resilience in the face of impossible odds. They spoke of their determination to remain free no matter the cost. On the flagship, Kethvar stared at the flood of human communications in growing disbelief. No species had ever responded to the fear protocols this way. Where he expected terror, he found defiance. Where he expected submission, he found preparation for war. Where he expected broken spirits, he found a fire that seemed to burn brighter. With each challenge, "This is impossible," Zexthul whispered. No species can resist the protocols. The psychological framework is perfect. It exploits universal fears, primal terrors that exist in all sapient minds. Kethvar watched as humans around the world began dismantling the alien technology that had crashed on their planet, reverse engineering it with frightening speed. He observed their military forces mobilizing with coordination that spoke of countless previous conflicts. He saw their leaders standing before crowds not to announce surrender but to declare war. Perhaps, Kethvar said slowly, these humans are not like the others. The first human ships launched within a week of first contact. They were crude vessels compared to Vorthak technology, held together with determination and desperation. But they flew directly toward the alien fleet, weapons charging, communications broadcasting a single message. You want to fight? You've got one. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Vorthak felt something they had never experienced before. As those primitive human ships approached, as signals flooded their communications arrays filled not with pleas for mercy, but with battle cries and threats, as they realized they were facing a species that would rather die fighting than live. In chains, the masters of fear tasted something new and terrifying. They felt afraid. Kethvar's claws dug into the armrests of his command throne as he watched the human fleet approach. Behind him, his officers whispered among themselves, their voices filled with uncertainty. The fear protocols had failed. The demonstrations of power had backfired. The ultimatum had been rejected with contempt. Supreme Overlord, Zexthul said, quietly, perhaps we should consider a strategic withdrawal, regroup and analyze this anomaly. But Kethvar's pride, built on 10 millennia of unchallenged dominance, would not allow retreat. No, he snarled. If these humans will not submit to fear, then we will teach them terror through force. Signal the main fleet. All vessels are to converge on this system. We will crush their resistance and make an example of them that will echo through the galaxy. As the message went out across the Vorthak Empire, calling their vast armadas to war, neither side realized that this moment would change everything. The empire that had ruled through fear was about to face an enemy that thrived on challenge. The species that had never known defeat was about to encounter the one force in the universe more dangerous than terror itself, human rage, backed by human ingenuity, and an absolute refusal to yield. The stage was set for a conflict that would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the future of every free species in the galaxy. The Fury Unleashed. The Vorthak main fleet arrived in the Sol system like a plague of locusts, blotting out the stars with their dark hulls. Over 3,000 vessels of various sizes formed, a wall of obsidian death around Earth's solar system. It was the largest armada the Empire had ever assembled, designed to end this human resistance once and for all. Supreme Overlord Kethvar stood before his assembled war council aboard the Nightmare's Edge, his burning eyes surveying the holographic display of the human system. The humans have had 2 weeks to contemplate their fate, he declared. They have seen our full might assembled against them. Surely now they will come to their senses. Commander Zexthul activated the communication array. All human vessels and installations, this is your final opportunity. Surrender unconditionally and your species will be granted the mercy of slavery. Continue this futile resistance and we will erase every trace of your existence from the cosmos. The response came not from Earth's governments or military commands, but from a single transmission broadcast across all frequencies. It was an elderly human woman, sitting in what appeared to be a simple kitchen, speaking directly to the camera with calm determination. "My name is Ellen Rodriguez," she said. "I'm a grandmother from Phoenix, Arizona. I survived the dust storms of 2157, raised 6 children through the water wars, and buried a husband who died fighting corporate pirates in the Belt. I'm 73 years old and I've been afraid plenty of times in my life. But you want to know something? I'm not afraid of you." She leaned forward, her weathered hands folded on the table. "You see, you made a mistake. You've spent 10,000 years conquering species who had something to lose. But humans? We've been fighting our whole lives just to survive. We're used to impossible odds. We're used to being told we can't win. And we're really used to proving people wrong." The transmission ended, but its impact rippled through the Vorthak fleet. This wasn't the response of broken prey. This was the calm defiance of a species that had already decided death was preferable to surrender. Kethvar's rage reached nuclear levels. "Open fire. Destroy their orbital installations. Show them the price of defiance." The Vorthak fleet unleashed hell upon the human outer colonies. Plasma beams that could crack moons reduced mining stations to vapor. Kinetic bombardments turned asteroid settlements into debris fields. Within hours, over 50,000 humans were dead, and the survivors faced a stark choice: surrender or watch their species burn. But instead of breaking, something extraordinary happened. The news of the attack spread through human space like wildfire, and with it came a fury unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Emergency broadcasts showed the faces of the dead, the destroyed homes, the children who would never grow up, and in response, humanity transformed. Every human colony, every settlement, every ship became a fortress. Miners who had never held weapons in anger became soldiers overnight. Scientists abandoned peaceful research to develop new ways to kill. Artists turned their creativity toward crafting instruments of war. The scattered, competitive factions that had defined humanity for centuries united under a single banner: rage. Dr. Sarah Martinez, now serving as Earth's chief science officer, worked 18-hour days in underground laboratories, leading teams of researchers in reverse engineering captured Vorthak technology. "Their psychology is their weakness," she explained to the assembled human leadership via secure channel. "They've never faced real resistance, so they're not prepared for adaptive warfare. We can use that." Within days, human forces deployed innovations that left the Vorthak reeling. Stealth ships that used quantum camouflage to approach undetected, kinetic missiles that could punch through Vorthak shields by rotating their frequency patterns. Most importantly, psychological warfare turned back on its creators. Captain Jake Chen of the UES Retribution led the first successful raid on a Vorthak supply convoy. His ship was a converted cargo hauler, armored with salvaged materials and armed with weapons that shouldn't have worked. But it did work because humans had learned to fight dirty. Unknown vessel, withdraw immediately or face annihilation. the Vorthak convoy commander transmitted. Jake's response was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring every Vorthak ship in the system could hear it. "This is Captain Chen of the human ship Retribution. We're here for revenge. You killed our people, destroyed our homes, and threatened our children. Now we're going to show you what happens when you make humanity angry." The battle that followed was brutal and one-sided, but not in the way the Vorthak expected. Human ships swarmed like angry wasps, using their small size and desperate fury to exploit every weakness in Vorthak formations. When their weapons ran out, they rammed enemy vessels. When their ships were crippled, they broadcast their final words as war cries to inspire others. But perhaps most disturbing to the Vorthak was what happened to their prisoners. Throughout their empire's history, captured enemies became broken, slaves, their spirits crushed by fear. Human prisoners, however, remained defiant even under torture. They sang songs, told jokes, and taunted their captors with predictions of inevitable human victory. On the nightmare's edge, Kethavar found himself dealing with something he had never encountered: doubt. His officers reported growing unrest among their own forces. The fear that the Vorthak had always used as a weapon was now being turned against them by an enemy that refused to be intimidated. "Supreme Overlord," Zexthul reported, his voice trembling, "we're receiving disturbing reports from across the Empire. Other species are watching this conflict. Some of our subject races are beginning to show signs of restlessness." The truth was spreading. For 10,000 years, the galaxy had believed the Vorthak were invincible. Now every species under their rule was watching humans fight back successfully. The psychological foundation of the Empire was cracking. News of human resistance reached the slave worlds through hidden communication networks. On Kepler 442b, the enslaved Androians began sabotaging Vorthak installations. In the Vega system, the subjugated Korvax hive mind started broadcasting human war songs to inspire rebellion. Across 100 worlds, species that had lived in terror for millennia began to remember what freedom felt like. The final confrontation came at the Battle of Titan, where the remnants of Earth's fleet made their last stand against the full might of the Vorthak armada. Outnumbered 100-1, the human forces should have been annihilated within minutes. Instead, they fought with a ferocity that shook the cosmos itself. Admiral Lisa Park, commander of the human fleet, broadcast her final message as Vorthak ships closed in around her battered command vessel. "To every free species listening, to every enslaved world dreaming of liberation, to every being who refuses to bow down to tyrants, this is how humans die. We die fighting, we die free, and we die knowing that our sacrifice will inspire others to carry on the fight." But humanity didn't die that day. As the Vorthak fleet moved in for the killing blow, something unprecedented happened. Ships began emerging from hyperspace around the battle zone. Not human ships, but vessels belonging to dozens of species from across the galaxy. The Androians had come. The Korvax had come. Even races the humans had never met were arriving to join the fight. The Galactic rebellion had begun. Kethavar watched in horror as his empire crumbled before his eyes. Species that had served without question for millennia now turned their weapons against their former masters. The fear that had held the galaxy in chains was replaced by something far more powerful: hope, inspired by human example. In his final transmission before his flagship was overwhelmed by the combined rebel fleet, Kethavar spoke words that would echo through history. "We ruled without fear for 10,000 years. We thought nothing could challenge us. But we never understood that there are things stronger than terror. We never faced a species that would rather die than kneel. We never met humanity. The Vorthak Empire fell not to superior technology or greater numbers, but to the simple, stubborn refusal of one species to accept defeat. Humanity had shown the galaxy that tyrants, no matter how powerful, could be overcome by courage, unity, and an absolute determination to remain free." In the aftermath. As the galaxy began the long process of rebuilding, humans found themselves reluctant heroes to billions of liberated beings. They had sought only to defend their own world, but their fury had lit a fire that burned across the stars, melting the chains of oppression and proving that freedom, once kindled in the hearts of the determined, could never be extinguished. Thus, predators who had feared nothing learned too late that there was one thing in the universe more dangerous than terror: the rage of beings who refused to surrender their freedom, no matter the cost.